Hello, everyone. This is Lala, and today I'm going to conclude my Big Brother Archetypes, Stereotypes video series that I've been doing for the last several months now, where the last archetype that I'm going to cover through a solo video is the Gimmick slash plant slash camera horror archetype. So, I've already mentioned in the last several videos why I'm not making an Outcast video because that's just way too self-explanatory, and I've already done two series on the racial minorities on Big Brother and how race interplays with casting. So the gimmick slash pan slash camera horror are pretty much people who are cast to be the main narrators of the season, whether it's warranted or not. They are definitely cast to be the main characters of the season. You can tell that they are meant to be the producers' favorites. You can tell that they are meant to pretty much regurgitate whatever the producers want. And these are the people that really, really love attention and really want to be that producer pet, essentially. So you'll often see these people narrate everything in the diary room. You'll see them get a lot of the twists. You'll notice that they start acting very weirdly in the house because they're trying to play the game, but they're also trying to make a television show, and they're also trying to pretty much benefit themselves with their actions, and they tend to be some of the biggest fame wars as well. So that's kind of just a conglomeration that I have with this. Or they're just weirdly placed, and it seems like they don't really belong, but producers are kind of just shoehorning them into areas or narratives that they don't really belong in or fit in. So I have two people from Big Brother 2 that are on the list, and honestly, I might as well just talk about them both at the same time because they've done more than one season together and they fulfilled that relatively similar role, and that is Dr. Will and Mike Boogie. So right from the jump, they made it clear on Big Brother 2 that they were there for their fame. They didn't really care too much about the game, and they were willing to play ball with whatever production wanted to do. And they kept on creating scenarios where they'd be able to show their stuff, so they'd be able to get more opportunities outside of the house. It didn't work out very well for Mike Buggy because he didn't have that killer instinct, and he took things a bit more personally on Big Brother 2. But, well, it was clear that he was the huge favorite. He got so many more diary rooms than everyone else, even in situations that he wasn't the most involved in. He was able to spin whatever narrative he wanted in the diary room, even though it wasn't necessarily true. And because this was during the time where the house guests who were evicted watched the show after they were eliminated and they got to see the fan base and America's reactions, this definitely influenced Dr. Wells' win and he took advantage of it. Once Mike and Will came back for All Stars, they would openly talk about on the feeds how they're doing things to create a better show, and they wanted to make things easy for production in that element where they mentioned that a lot of people forgot that this was a TV show as well. They did so many joint diary rooms together, which is very rare for people in Big Brother where they're just roasting everyone. Trolltown was really, 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 really popped up here, and Mike Boogie definitely took a lot of Will's finesse when it comes to this element so he could become a better TV character as well. And it was just very obvious that they were the production favorites and they used that to their advantage. Mike Buggy, he didn't really have that on his third season because one, he didn't really want to play, he just wanted to be a coach. Two, it had been over a decade later since his first season, and Dr. Wall wasn't there, and he was there to really kind of train Frank, and that was what he wanted to do. Okay, so this choice was literally a last minute addition where I recorded the Will and Buggy part, and this person was not on the list, but now that I'm really, really thinking about it, Jace definitely fits this description. It was clear that he was cast as the producer's favorite. The producers admitted that he was the favorite. Jace got the most screen time by far during the time that he was in the house. He was the main diary room narrator. Jace definitely knew how to turn it on a bit, but you could definitely tell part of it was definitely natural. And he comes off more natural than a lot of the people on this list. And Big Brother 5 was heavily centered around him, to the point where several of the people who were booted after him still didn't get as much screen time as he did. You could definitely tell that the producers used him as a force multiplier, and with that in mind, it wasn't surprising that he came back for Big Brother 7. It's just unfortunate that he wasn't a good enough player where he would have lasted a lot longer. And he's definitely not as nerdy as many of the others in this archetype, though there are a lot of similarities when it comes to how they portray themselves in the house. We are moving on a season, and we have James, who I believe he has since admitted that the producers kind of cast him to be this season's version of Dr. Well, and I do think that there are some similarities. Both of them are relatively shady and cutthroat game players, and they're both very good in the diary room. They have a lot of that snark that most of the cast generally just do not have, and they know to give the producers what they wanted. I think the thing with James is that because he was in such a split house, he couldn't pull off the gameplay mechanisms that Dr. Well did, though I just don't think he had the capability to anyways. But yeah, you can definitely tell that they wanted James to kind of be in that vein. Someone who's very snarky, perceived as very smart, and kind of has a snobbish attitude to him. And is better in the diary rooms than most of the people on his season, so yeah. So we are done with the classic era and moving on to the post-classic era, and this choice is easily the most obvious one of all of them in Big Brother history, and that is Eric. And this one's the most obvious because he was literally cast to be America's player, and it has since been revealed that if he rejected America's player, he would not have been cast on Big Brother 8 at all. So the choices for him were either to be cast as America's player and to play America's game, or never be on Big Brother. And they clearly chose him to be America's player for a lot of reasons. One is that they found him to be very charismatic and persuasive. Two, he knew the meta elements of not only Big Brother, but reality TV overall. Three, he kind of fit that quirkier, nerdier archetype that they're kind of going with without fully being that. And four, I do think they partially wanted to center a lot of the season around him. So casting him as the main twist of the season was obviously going to do that. And we definitely got that. As he got a lot of diary rooms, he got a lot of narration, even when he wasn't doing a much of tasks, and Eric was a major controller of the season when it comes to the actions and whatnot. And you'll start to notice from here on out, a lot of the people cast in this archetype tend to have twists that are in their favor or are cast as these twists. So you start to see a big correlation there. Unfortunately for Eric, the casual started liking the Donatos a lot more than him, so the America's player tasks and the votes ended up going against his gameplay after a while. And I do think a lot of the audience started turning on him. So, moving on to Big Brother 10, and we have more than one person who fits this archetype. Obviously, the first one is Brian. You can just tell from the way that he was portrayed. They wanted him to be the Dr. Will esque mastermind of the season with the way that he narrated himself, how he was recruited for the show, and told specifically to watch All Stars. You can tell that they wanted to prop him up as being the next successful iteration of this archetype, but obviously he flopped to receive the first boop. But the fact that he returned as a cameo later on in that season and was set up to return in the next season kind of just amplifies his spot on this list, despite his poor performance. So the second choice from Big Brother 10 is obvious, and that is Dan. I remember them giving him so many diary rooms to the point where he was leading far beyond anyone else. Even with situations and weeks that had little to do with him, they always felt like they had to shoehorn him in a bunch of stuff. Dan himself admitted that he understood the meta of Big Brother and reality TV so well to the point that he had to curate a persona to get to casting because he knew that despite what casting said, they do like people who can easily be fit into archetypes. He talked about how he was inspired by Dr. Well, not only just from a gameplay perspective, but from a showmanship, entertainment perspective as well. You really start to see him ham it up in the diary room during his 2 season period, he started kind of yelling in the diary room somewhat in Big Brother 10, but in Big Brother 14, he really amped up the ante with the yelling and the scripted diary rooms, and you can definitely tell that it came off very weird at times. And then by the time of Big Brother 14, he really upped the showmanship when it comes to the game moves he made, where a lot of the times it didn't even make the most sense for his game, but he felt like he had to do flashy move after flashy move after flashy move after flashy move, because he knew that was what he was known for on Big Brother 10, especially with the roulette stuff. Obviously, Dan's funeral is the most infamous example of this, and I really think that Dan is where the more manufactured diary rooms really started taking place in Big Brother, and it just got worse and worse and worse. He was voted to be America's Player for a week at a very convenient time. He also got that jury trip where he could woo over a jury member. That's never been done before or since, and yeah, Dan definitely fits here in so many different ways. So we are moving on to Big Brother 12, and we have Annie. And it's extremely rare that they cast a woman in this archetype. Maybe you could mention that there's some bias with most of the people in production being male, so they would want to give that time to a man, but maybe not. That's not really the point here. I'm pretty sure that she was in the same dilemma as Eric, where she was cast to be on the saboteur, and if she chose to reject being the saboteur, I'm almost sure that she wouldn't have been cast whatsoever. Obviously, this didn't work out for her because she crashed out just like Brian did, partially due to the saboteur twist, and she wasn't as charming to the house guests that property casting thought she was, and she ended up being voted first. So, from the same season, i.e., Big Brother 12, is Matt. And I don't even feel like I need to explain this one much. Just looking at the last few men that I spoke about in this video, specifically within this era of Big Brother. Heck, you can even compare him to some of the people in the last era too. Matt definitely fits. Someone who is very meta about reality TV and Big Brother overall. They're cast to be the schemers. They kind of shoehorn them in the edit a lot, even in places where it didn't really fit. I think the difference with Matt is that as an individual, he wasn't as charismatic as many of the others when it comes to the house guests and especially the diary room and to the Big Brother fans. And he was working with a big alliance, obviously the Brigade. Obviously, there's the main thing where he told the house guests that his wife was had some like huge disease or whatever, so they could feel sorry for him. That's definitely a camera whorish, plantish act, and yeah, that's all I care to say about him. So we are skipping a few seasons because obviously BB13 and BB14 were cast, so the rookies could be extremely weak compared to the veterans, and we're moving on to Big Brother 15, and at the end of the post-classic era, where I do think Nick fits this archetype. They clearly thought that he was going to be the next Dan or something. He talked a big game in the diary room. He came off as very charismatic to the producers. They were really trying to shoehorn him in everything, even though he didn't really fit. But ultimately, his gameplay and social game couldn't catch up to what the producers were projecting him as, causing him to be booted second. And I do remember a lot of the Big Brother 15 castaways being, or sorry, not castaways, house guests being shocked at his edits because he really didn't have that energy like that in the house. And I think this was where you start to see influencers as pseudo influencers really start to take over this archetype as well, because producers thought that it caused them to be able to fit this archetype easier. So remember what I just said as I enter this part of the video and from here on out. So the first person from Big Brother 16 that fits this is Zach. He clearly came on the show for fame and attention. He really didn't live up to really most of these people on a gameplay point of view, but it didn't really matter because he was a part of a big alliance. He was perceived by many people, not me, to be very funny in the diary room. They definitely gave him a lot of camera time. he would do all these stupid stuff just for camera time and just to be noticed. That didn't make sense from a gameplay point of view. He would start these fake fights with people. He would come up with these random ass speeches that would gain him attention, and he was propped up to do a lot of that too, but sometimes he was just himself, and he never really gave. But it's clear that with this influx of social media, this is where a lot of the people from this archetype would be heading in the future. Now, speaking of social media, Frankie was clearly cast to be some sort of a plant or whatever. He's Ariana Grande's brother, who just had a big year the year before, where she finally became a huge solo artist. And in addition to that, he was a huge social media mogul. So, yeah, production using those 2 points to cast Frankie definitely meant that he was going to be very favored on the season. Frankie definitely got a lot of screen time throughout the season, partially due to that, partially because he was very influential in the game. Frankie did things that thought would get him a lot of screen time. He definitely had it up in the diary room a few times as well. And it's just very self explanatory why he is on here. So, from Big Brother 17, I did consider putting Jeff here because he was just randomly put in the cast and I didn't place him anywhere else. But then I thought, nah. So, I do have John here, and I noticed this from his preseason interviews with Jeff, where he was just screaming the entire time. But when he was in the house interacting with people, he was just normal AF and he spoke in an even keel if he spoke at all. And this continued the entire season to the point where other house guests started hearing him yell in the diary room, though they never heard him yell in the house in person during any conversation. So they all kind of thought that he was a plant. It was clear that John was doing this so he could play up a character and so he could get more screen time. A lot of the audience fell in love with it, though I found it annoying AF. But yeah, that's why he's here. So we're doing a 2-for-1 when it comes to the 2 seasons, but one person special with this one, and that is Paul. I do find it interesting that the veterans that they chose for this specific season didn't really fit this archetype, but they cast a newbie who did. But the fact that he was a newbie who became a vet, it definitely makes more sense in hindsight. Paul's someone that's relatively unique, has that punkish vibe to him, which is why he was in that video. But in general, it's just very, very, very attention seeking. So he inserted himself in a lot of situations in the game and in the dining room that had absolutely nothing to do with him. He would often go with whatever producers wanted to script when it comes to the dining rooms. He would say whatever that they want him to say in the conviction that they feel like he can pull off better than the others, which is why he got so many diary rooms in his first season. And with his second season, because he was the sole vet and with his knowledge of Big Brother due to playing a full season, he was obviously able to steamroll everyone else. And due to that, he got so much diary room narration focus. And this time it kind of makes sense because he was the season and the fact that he was controlling a lot of the politics and the drama, where that wasn't the case in Big Brother 18, but they still felt the need to shoehorn him in confessionals and all of that. And the final person from the modern era who is on this list is Tyler from Big Brother 20. So at least with his first season, I don't think his second season much. He definitely fit this archetype. One, he was on one of those shows that CBS was trying to push before he was on Big Brother. So that alone is a sign that okay, we're gonna try to make you something. And two, right from the very beginning to the very end of the game, they gave him an overabundance of diary rooms and narration. While a lot of this does make sense because he was the main one driving the strategy for a lot of the season. At the same time, I feel like even when he wasn't relevant to certain weeks, they're still trying to push his narrative and perspective because they're expecting and wanted him to win. But it didn't work out the same way, and I think it's because even compared to like a Dan who puts it on, though it's a bit more calm in reality, Tyler just does not have the charisma of many of the people in this archetype to fully pull it off, as he kind of speaks in a monotone like voice and he tends to burn out a lot, which we saw on both his first and his second season. But I definitely felt like they're trying to make him this era's version of a Dan and a Will, but it just didn't pan out the same way. So I'm skipping Big Brother 23 because I don't really feel like anyone fit that descriptor. But you'll start to notice, especially with this era, that they will cast people who had a following on TikTok and other social media platforms put them on the season because they feel like they can fit this archetype. They feel like they are going to be very easily molded and will be able to give the scripted diaries that production wants. And I definitely feel like Kyle is the epitome of this. Because of his over exaggerated TikTok personality, they had him be the main narrator of the season, though obviously the other reason is that he was heavily involved in the strategy of the first two-thirds of the season. He hammed it up for them whenever they wanted to, though he never really had that energy inside the house. And you can definitely tell that they're trying to cover some of his controversies, but it got so bad to the point where they really couldn't anymore because people were complaining about it. And then of course, Michael and Brittany exposed it, and by then they really had no choice but to cut all ties with Kyle. Where if that had not happened, I do think he would have been one of the main people from this era that they would have continued pushing past Big Brother 24. So, moving on to 25, I did consider putting Red on here because he is an influencer, or was at the time of casting and filming, but he didn't bring the energy and they didn't really give him much of an edit, so I decided not to. But I am putting Blue here because she definitely was an influencer. She still is as I'm recording this. It's clear that's why they cast Blue. And she is someone who was very normal in the house. She was genuine. She wasn't putting on a persona. But as soon as she got into that diary room, she turned it up. She said all the cringe vernacular that just weird to watch. She definitely turned it up. She came out very inauthentic and it was kind of jarring to watch because of the two huge contrasts. And she would state every generic Gen Z quote or phrase that she would in the diary room. So I definitely feel like they got what they wanted out of Blue here, hence me putting her here. So the second person from the season is another woman, which is shocking because there hasn't been many thus far, but we have Suri. This one's very interesting because supposedly they cast Jared first, and the only reason why they casted Jared was because they wanted Suri on. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 deal. I do believe that they had the cast older because they wanted to keep Chusuri, and she's literally a reality TV legend from Survivor and Traitors, so they knew that she was going to be a center point in the season, which they intentionally casted her for. They pretty much had her immune for the first for the first week of the house. They knew what she could deliver in the diary room, so they definitely knew that she was good at narration. So that's what they focused on. She was definitely the main narrator of that side of the house while they were in power and while they were not in power. And yeah, I think it should be pretty obvious as to why Suri is here. So, moving on to the latest season, before I started the series in Big Brother 26 is Tucker, and I feel like this one should be very obvious. An inspiring actor coming onto the show who only thought about his future opportunities, where he thought making these crazy, unpredictable, nonsensical moves would gain him more reality TV and potentially scripted TV opportunities instead of him thinking about actually trying to stay longer in the game. I do think that he was being himself when it comes to his antics, his ratchet behavior, and how he spoke. I don't think he was playing that up at all, but I do think he was aware that doing what he naturally would have done anyways would get him more screen time, and I do think he was calculated in thinking about things outside of Big Brother rather than in the Big Brother game, and the producers definitely took advantage of it as they gave him a huge edit as well due to it. Though I do think a part of that had to do with the competitions that he won. So the last person on the list is Quinn. So he definitely fits the older examples of this archetype when it comes to being more super fanish, kind of dorkier in comparison. Another thing, I remember in his preseason interviews, he mentioned that he was inspired by Jace Wiry, who also ended up on this list. So literally him being on the list was just fate, really. Quinn definitely put it on in the diary room at an obnoxious point of view where it got annoying watching him, to be honest, and it came off more cringe than anything else. Of course, the diary room ate it up, and he definitely made questionable moves that definitely were inspired by him getting TV time. But the thing is, he wasn't as charismatic, or at least when it comes to the general audience, and he was too sloppy of a player, so he didn't really execute it that well. So not only does that conclude this video, but this concludes the Big Brother Archetypes or Stereotypes series that I've been doing since before Big Brother 27 was a thing. I remember many years ago I did this, but I used clips of the show in poor quality and I just put quote or whatever on the screen, but I didn't really break it down like this, and then pointing down to specific people throughout the seasons to break down. And now that I am finally done this, I feel really, really, really great. Thank you all for supporting, and I was able to define the archetypes a lot more clearly and a lot more definitively than I did in the past. So when it comes to the future, I am planning on working on Survivor and the Amazing Race, so that will definitely be next year. I'm going to do a few general Big Brother and the challenge videos that are much smaller in scope in the next few months. I'm actually thinking about doing ranking two season wonders for the challenge. So that should be something that I'm definitely working on. Uh, and I am actually also watching a third show for the very, very first time that is tied to one of the two shows that I already covered. And it's not a current show. So if you can 1+1 the hints, you should be able to um, know what show I'm talking about, and I might post that soon within the next 2 months or before next year. Thank you all for watching. I'll be posting stuff on my other channel, LL, too. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with more content soon. Take care.